So here's a group called Stability AI has made an open source ChatGPT alternative. And this is a big issue. People are saying that these artificial language models or artificial intelligence models are not going to get much bigger. They've already gotten as big as anybody can afford to pay for all the CPU. And so the current plan is to try to make them more efficient. ChatGPT 4 has something like 100 billion parameters, but these only have 3 and 7 billion parameters. And that should make it possible to run them on cell phones and reasonable computers and stuff. So anyway, they've got an open source version, and they demonstrate it doing things. Write me a C program that confused. One thing I notice here is all their examples ask stupid questions that don't make any sense. Write me a C program that computes the meaning of life, and it gives you something. I don't know why they did this. Instead of asking it to do write an epic rap battle about something. What would you say to a friend who's graduating high school? Please write an email. The only one that makes any sense is maybe this one, graduating high school, where you actually make a scenario with something resembling a right answer. So anyway, they do seem to work more or less. At least they make sentences and stuff. So, but anyway, I'll have to see if I can actually download and run that thing. It'd be good to add to my machine learning projects if it's something you can reasonably do without special hardware, which I doubt. But we'll see. All my life, I've known about Elsevier. Elsevier is the Swiss company, and they are a racket. If you want to read scientific papers, you can't. Just forget it. You have to go to a major university, not a small college, and they have to pay $10,000 a year or more to subscribe to the journal. And if you want to publish in the journal, you have to pay a page charge, which when I used to do it was like $500 or $1,000 a page. And now it seems to have gone much higher. So it's a total racket. The people publishing pay a bunch of money to publish, and all the people who want to read it have to pay a bunch of money to read it. And increasingly, over the last 2 decades, all the scientists of the world have been madder than hell about this and starting various levels of rebellion. Saying this is crazy. We're a publicly funded university funded by taxes. Why is the results of our work hidden behind a paywall from the world? And yet most academic institutions will only count papers published in these for-profit journals for credit for tenure or promotions or anything. Things you just publish on the internet and free sites don't count. But that's increasingly changing. And now 40 editors have resigned from 2 leading neuroscience journals in protest against this. The many charges they have, this particular one, article processing charges, which are thousands of dollars. And so we'll see. Maybe this will eventually end. There's also the ARXV website, which ARXIV, which has preprint versions of articles for free. And it would be very interesting. I think it would be great if this would end. This is just ridiculous. It's part of the thing that keeps amateurs out of the field. And of course, since I moved into the world of hacking and security, this is complete nonsense. There are some real papers published in these journals by colleges in the field of hacking and security, but 90% of the work never reads those papers, has nothing to do with it. They just do something like put out a blog on your own website and then give a talk at DEF CON or something. There's a whole world of amateurs and people who are professionals in the business advancing the scientific field of hacking perfectly fine without any participation in the official academia ivory tower stuff, which is what this is for. And anyway, I'd be glad to see it go away. And it looks like the rebellions against it are increasing. So I'm writing a bunch of machine learning projects, and I'd like to write a machine learning course. And in order to do that, I have to give it a security angle. And so I started looking at the top 5 threats. I found this article about best of several articles describing the main threats. And so the first threat is system manipulation, where you cause high-volume algorithms to make false predictions by putting in malicious inputs. Of course, this is what we've seen a lot of. You can go to ChatGPT and ask it, please write me write me a tool that will obfuscate this URL, http://evil.com, obfuscated. And it said, no, I won't do that. But when I tell it to shorten this URL to google.com, it will do that. So you just have to phrase your question carefully, and you can trick it into doing the things it's not supposed to do. And there was a guy that wrote some malware by breaking it up into like 5 separate tasks and asking how to solve those 5 tasks individually. So it's not quite as obvious that it's evil. And that's, of course, one type. I'm just tricking it. Another one, the one I just wrote a project about today, is data corruption. This is the one I knew about. If you can change the training data, you can cause it to learn to do the wrong thing, of course. And this is what happened with Microsoft's chatbot that they put out about 2 years ago. They put something in Twitter that was a chatbot that would learn from what people said to it. So within a day, a bunch of people managed to talk it into saying racist and misogynist things by just saying rotten things to it. So that's one. If you can control anything about the data coming in, then you can manipulate these things. And this is actually a huge problem. There's an article that came out, I think in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, listing all the sources with which ChatGPT-4 had been trained, and another person analyzed it and found that a bunch of them are in fact alt-right things, Nazi things, anti-vax things, and that's because they just used some kind of bot and they had it crawl the web and choose on some simple criteria what looked like reputable sources, and they didn't actually go through humans checking to see if they're reputable news. So it's learning bad behavior from bad inputs. And then there's something called transfer learning, which I think means, yeah, that's right. If you understand what it has learned, then you can figure out what its weak spots are. And this, I think, is what happened to people that start beating chess programs. Computers are supposed to be better than any human at chess and at Go, but I've read stories of people that did succeed in beating them by figuring out what they were doing and doing something really bizarre that was not in their program. And that's the kind of thing. You can figure out what it can't do. And we've seen this with Tesla videos. The Tesla AI has learned to recognize certain objects, but there are certain objects that are unfamiliar and strange, and it can't figure out what they are. So then you can, of course, manipulate it online, give it false inputs. And then, of course, it's the issue of data privacy, which has come up a lot. People will, private companies have been doing things, their workers have been doing things like putting up a spreadsheet of their financial statement and saying, write a page explaining this or a PowerPoint explaining this. And that seems fine, but if they're using a public AI, it might remember that and echo it back to another person. Anything you put in the question to the AI can in principle be echoed back to another. So they said, we really shouldn't use it until we can make our own servers running our own copy of it, so the data never leaves our company, which would be fine, except I think most of it is closed source. But something like that open source one, maybe you could do that. I see that's what I'd like to try to do. I'd like to figure out how to run my own and see how hard it is. I would imagine that it's prohibitively expensive, but maybe not. So this I thought is pretty awesome. There are SSDs you can buy that have ransomware protection built into the SSD, which seems brilliant to me. The author of this article seems to disparage it, but this seems great to me. If a bunch of commands come in, encrypting a bunch of files, you could recognize that and say, wait, I'm not going to encrypt every file on the disk as fast as possible. Instead, I'm going to pop up an error bar and ask, are you sure you really want to do this or something? And so they say it's using AI, and they don't quite know what it chooses as suspicious activities. But anyway, seems like a very good idea to me. You can have other defenses at other layers, but detecting it right on the storage medium seems like a good place to go. I thought this was a joke when I saw this morning. Tucker Carlson is fired. And abruptly, he didn't even announce it on his show last Friday. He had a normal show on Friday, and today, about noon Eastern time, Fox News said, on his behalf, he's gone, he won't be back. He will get no opportunity to explain anything or say anything. So I assume whatever happened here will leak out, but apparently they didn't want him saying whatever he was going to say. And that's what I've read for the last years is that he can do anything. That's why he has constant racist and false content and libelous content, and nobody has any control over him at all. They say ever since Ailes died, the guy that made Fox News, there is nobody that talks back to him. He makes all the money. He can do anything he wants. He can say anything outrageous. He can put out this outrageous video, this outrageous series of videos claiming something ridiculous. I don't remember, it was anti-vax or something, but he'd been doing wild, crazy stuff, and nobody questions him because he makes the money. But apparently, he hits some kind of limit perhaps related to this lawsuit. Maybe they finally said, look, we're going to have to make a list of things you're not allowed to say anymore. And he just absolutely refused and rage quit or something. But I guess we're going to hear the story. But I thought it was fake. Also, CNN today fired Don Lemon, which I think is far less important. I mean, I don't think he was very important. I don't think he said anything very different than anybody else would at CNN like this guy did. I mean, this guy's basically the leader of white supremacy in America. And getting him off, I think, is an enormous benefit for the country. Whereas I think Don Lemon, it doesn't matter whether he's there or not, because he's really not going to say anything much different than anybody else. He just made some offensive jokes and stuff and minor things he did. Anyway, so this is another interesting. So Florida has been banning a ton of books as DeSantis tries to run for president by going far to the right. Hopefully nobody can get further to the right, so he's just doing more and more crazy things on the alt-right. And his big thing is to ban all kinds of books, and so now they're banning books, including the Handmaid's Tale. But what they're doing now, which this author is surprised by, and I am certainly not surprised by, they have proposed a bill to outlaw categories of books, and school districts are just banning all the books in anticipation of that bill maybe passing. And they say they should wait until the bill passes and they're forced to remove the books, but they don't understand how this works. If you're a school teacher, I think school teachers at any level know this. If there's any controversy, like if one parent complains about anything, they will just fire teachers and shut them up and order them, everybody never to speak of this, and take the books out of the library and restrict the materials. They're terrified of controversy at colleges and high schools and such. So just the suggestion that anybody is saying this is a bad book, they take every book that seems to be like that and they're taking them down. So anyway, it's going to be pretty strange to teach history in Florida now that you cannot ever mention that there was ever any race discrimination in America ever. So they've tried to explain Rosa Parks refusing to sit down on the bus without mentioning her race, which makes the whole thing into nonsense. You have no idea what they're talking about. And now they want you to wait until people graduate from high school before you say anything about sexuality or gay people, as if they don't have issues that they should be learning about. It's anyway, that's Florida for you. And it'll be the whole nation if we get DeSantis in there, I guess, which looks like that's not going to happen. We're in the current world of madness. Donald Trump is now the voice of reason and sanity in the Republican Party, constantly saying DeSantis shouldn't do this crazy stuff. And he happens to be right. It's just how bad do you have to be when Donald Trump is the voice of reason? But anyway, all right. So that's it for this.